Today's episode is brought to you by the Tax Defense Group. Tax season is here, and that means it's time to file. Instead of going through the hassle of walking to an H&R Block, you can call the experts at the Tax Defense Group. They can handle your tax filing anywhere. Also, for a limited time, if you're a W-2 employee, you can save half off your filing. All you have to do is call the Tax Defense Group before April 15, 2020, and mention that you saw this ad on UCast Studios. Call the Tax Defense Group today at 800-850-7973. The number again is 800-850-7973. And you can visit them online at thetaxdefensegroup.com. Also, shout out to our second sponsor, Junkie. There are millions of good paying jobs out there, and what might be holding you back from getting one of them is having an up-to-date, well-written resume. Junkie offers a resume writing service for the low cost of $145. And with only a 3-day turnaround, you can't beat the price and delivery time. Call Junkie today at 805-587-7966, and you can visit them online at RotedJunkie.com. Mention that you saw this ad on UCast Studios, and they'll get right to work. Welcome everybody back to the TheDomCast, and you know what, how about to solve the problem of not knowing what episode it is? I mean, yeah, I could easily just look it up before I start recording. Let's rename it Quarantine Radio, inspired by the great Tory Lanez. Oh man, Tory, his music was already dope, and he has truly become a GOAT during these trying times on Instagram. Although I don't know if YouTube is even gonna let that name fly, because you know that they like to take heads off around here. But yeah, anyways, we are on a podcast episode in the 50s. We actually do have a little bit of NBA news today, a couple of different things to talk about before I move on into the diaries of a not really stressed Celtics fan. I mean, right, well, yeah, definitely stressed because there's no NBA right now, but I definitely wanted to review some things because I'm constantly asked about the story of how I became a Celtic fan and all that, so I figured I was just going to kind of review it year by year later in the podcast because I wanted to talk about the 08 year anyways, and I didn't want to make a video on it because I feel like the topic is kind of like beat like a dead horse. It didn't inspire me to make an actual video topic dedicated to it. However, I would like to take a trip down memory lane. This is the perfect time, so 08 will be caught up in that, and yeah, we'll address that when we get there. But on the topic of the current NBA, because we always start with whatever little tidbits we get from there, we do have just a few things. Of course, starting with the very basic idea from Adam Silver that we're not really going to know anything solid or have any decisions made until, when did he say, around May 1st? Yeah, because right now that is the current pause. So today we are recording on April 10th, and the current lockdown is supposed to go until at least April 30th. Well, social distancing guidelines, and I know down here in Florida, Ron DeSantis is talking about possibly opening up school on May 1st. That's the plan right now. Although I truly think these, I saw somebody say it on Twitter, like the guidelines, it really seems like they just spring it on you at the end of every month so you don't go crazy when they tell you it's actually going to be like 4 months. And so in a way, I think you go a little bit more crazier not knowing when anything is actually going to open back up or when this is going to end in particular. However, I think May 1st is just a little bit optimistic in terms of, you know, school and social gatherings or whatever. But yes, that is what Adam Silver is saying for when we're going to know anything solid. But I did see a couple of interesting things besides that. So I saw a tweet saying that NBA owners, a majority of them right now, are in favor of moving the NBA draft to around August. As you know, the draft normally takes place really right after the NBA season. The finals will go into like mid-June maybe, and then you have the draft in July. So right now they're just thinking about having it in August, and that prompted a pretty interesting tweet from, this is Bobby Marks. I guess this is just another sports reporter that I follow because I follow really all of them, trying to get different information from as many different sources as you can. And he had some ideas. So he was saying that this might be the best case scenario. So you would have an early July start of the NBA playoffs, which he's talking about July 2020, fucking obviously. Mid-August NBA Finals, end of August NBA Draft, which again is what it looks like the owners are supporting right now. September 1st would be the start of free agency. September 10th would start the summer and fall league. Well, really, I guess at that point it's more of the fall league, depending on where it's going to run to. And 2 months after that starts, December 10th, that's when training camp opens. And on December 25th, the regular season would open, an 82-game regular season. And an 82-game regular season starting from there, he's saying, is going to end in mid-June. Now, this is interesting for a couple of reasons. Obviously, having lived through the 2012 lockout, I remember the NBA season starting on Christmas Day. That was actually Christmas Day 2011 because it was for the 2012 season. And I gotta say, this goes back to what I was talking about a couple of podcasts ago. I've probably thrown it out there, but I was saying that if they are really wanting to salvage any of the NBA season, if they're wanting to bring it back for us, if it's even possible, which again we won't even know, it seems like it would make it a perfect time to alter the schedule permanently. And the way that he's talking about here, I mean, if you have the regular season end in mid-June, it looks like you would then be on a similar schedule to what we're talking about starting now, because that would, what did it say? He said that you would have a mid-August finals. So, a mid-June regular season end, yeah, you are probably looking at like August. You're looking at moving it to around that time. You're permanently moving the NBA to a December 25th start. Now, in this scenario, although you might be permanently altering when the NBA season runs, and again, that's just maybe. We don't know if they would even adopt this, and if they did, would they just go back to regular if they could? We also don't know if NBA players would be cool playing through the summer. Do they actually like being off for summer vacation with everybody else? I think that's something that would probably have to be taken into account here. However, this doesn't really include any of the changes that people actually want, like less regular season games, but that's what people want. We don't necessarily, and maybe even some of the players, considering load management has become a thing, but then again, do they really? Because then that means less money, and we know the NBA is all about money, or, for the most part anyways, a very large percentage is about money, just like any other business, which is why we're sitting here talking about starting a season in July when the way things are going. Just last week, they were talking about possibly angling to cancel it. Jared Dudley sent out a tweet after that saying, look, there's so much money involved, we're not gonna have any clue whether they're canceling anytime soon or not. But the interesting thing coming from this is starting the NBA season on Christmas, because that always seems like the time where people say that's where casuals and most people start paying attention to the league. Let's be real. The real diehard fans, the real hardcore fans like us, we're the people who are watching from day one. Like 2015, I remember, what was that? The Bulls and Cavaliers, I think, on Halloween. Yeah, we straight right after whatever we're doing for Halloween, we on the NBA that night. But most people, it's the Christmas games with the family. And you wonder if that changes here, right? Because then that's just the start of the season. So are people still going to wait until things progress a little bit more? I don't know. That's a little bit interesting. Let me know what you think in the comment section in the description about straight starting there. When they did it in 2011, of course, it was out of necessity, but it was beautiful, I gotta say. Now, it was beautiful too, because that came at a time where we thought that there was a really good chance of there not being any NBA season. So if you remember actually living through the lockout, all the talk was like, oh man, like everyone was being fucking pessimistic. Everyone was like, we don't know if we're gonna have a season, we're not any closer on an agreement. Then boom, one day it just happened. So it was like a Christmas gift. And if it becomes an every year thing where that's where the season starts, well, I think that's still like a Christmas gift to me, honestly. When you talk about coming off of the off season is pretty long. Or at least it feels like a long time, because you go and again you end in June and you don't actually have any real basketball that you care about for another 3 to 4 months. And so same thing here, if you're ending in August, then yeah, it's still 4 months away. So yeah, I think it's just as excited as us real hardcore fans are when it comes back in October. Still be very excited on Christmas. That's what I think. But regardless of what I think, this is just an idea, and ideas are ever changing with the information that we get pretty much every other day now. Regardless of what happens with this, I feel I was having this thought earlier, and I tweeted out that I had a pessimistic ass tweet really about how regular life is supposed to resume in general, but especially NBA games. I think it's pretty implied that there are going to be no fans if the 2020 season does finish. So if we do have the best case scenario of an early July start of the playoffs, I still don't think there are going to be fans, because there's going to be no treatment by then for the virus itself. And so then people started getting into conversations about antibodies and herd immunity and all these things. But regardless, I don't think, what do arenas hold? You're holding tens of thousands of people in an arena, hot off of a pandemic. So this year there will definitely be no fans in it. Regardless, I highly doubt there will be any fans if they're going to finish. But I was also thinking about the 2021 season. I was wondering to myself, how does that work? Because now that the curve is starting to flatten in certain areas, we're seeing encouraging signs. Now people are starting to move on to the thought of, okay, when we do reopen up society, are we going to have to close it down quickly again because there's going to be a second wave? Because a vaccine right now is not supposed to happen for like another, some number of months or maybe even a year. And that just had me thinking about anything that requires an arena, any sport that requires an arena and tens of thousands of people, needing to be there. So let's say in everybody's worst nightmare, the 2020 season is canceled. They say to hell with it. We're just going to go ahead and cut our losses. We're going to start the 2021 season fresh so that this season's hiccups do not bump into that season. So we start in October at the regular. That's 6 months from now. even then we're probably not going to have a vaccine. And so is that a time where people would even feel comfortable shoving themselves into very packed arenas? I know I probably wouldn't, and I think there's a lot of people that feel the same way. And then by then, will it even be in the guidelines? Will that even be allowed? So I say all this to say, like, I don't have a crystal ball or whatever. I'm not Bibbidi or Bobbidi, whichever one of them from DBZ had that shit, the Kais and all that. I don't have that here, but I'm just thinking of, I think even when we get the NBA back, it might be a little bit, the fans might be lagging a little bit behind is all I'm saying, and that's going to be interesting. I wonder when that happens, how long is like, how long is it going to be able to carry our excitement hearing players talk to each other on the floor, and what types of things are we going to hear? Are we going to be able to hear them clearly? Because we've watched Summer League before, and maybe I need to go on YouTube and cut on a Summer League game so I can refresh my memory, because you watch Summer League and you watch like is that the one that they do in Orlando? I don't know the exact name of that, but I just wonder how long that's going to be able to replace the fan moments and the excitement that comes from buzzer beaters and the momentum that comes with crowds. And even somebody, one of my Twitter followers, had brought up a good point about home court advantage in the playoffs. That's what a lot of teams play for, because that's just an important thing. Psychologically, that's an important thing to have your fan support and all that good stuff. That was actually one of the things I was really looking forward to with the Clippers and Lakers playoff series, which I know was supposed to happen. I just know that was supposed to happen, and I could not wait to be in a playoff series and listening to the playoff crowd, because just the LA crowd in specific, because during the regular season that was one of the more fascinating things. This was the closest that those two teams have ever been, and this is one of the only times, actually this is the only time both teams were expected to be competing for a championship. So yeah, sorry for my pessimism, I guess, but I'm just already looking ahead to like how this is going to affect next season as well, because I don't know, it just there's some days where it just feels like this thing might be and it take a lot longer than people actually think. But anyways, that's all we know at the moment. That's the only things that really came up. Again, that tweet was made by Bobby Marks if you want to give him a follow. There was more interesting news that happened really today, and this is what I was excited to talk about, because A, it's some shred of NBA news. It's better than we've gotten in like 2 weeks, and B, I just don't know if I fully understand what's going on here and what may go on in the future. So if you, well, at this point, it wouldn't be the fact that you've been living under a rock. It would be the fact that you've been living during a pandemic, and this probably just isn't that important. However, apparently there is some sizable rift between Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. We know the whole situation and how it happened. Rudy Gobert was the first player to be confirmed with coronavirus, and that's important because we don't know how he actually got it, or if another player actually gave it to him, or if he gave it to Donovan Mitchell. We don't actually know. But the report, and the credible reports, and I'll talk a little bit more about why they seem credible right now, but the credible reports are that there is a rift between those two because of Gobert's careless actions that Donovan Mitchell does not care to fix, or he's having a hard time. They say the word they use is that he's reluctant to fix it. And again, if you just forgotten, because it probably feels like that's happened 5 years ago now, Rudy Gobert, of course, he was really careless. As soon as the NBA implemented that thing of the reporters need to stay 6 feet away from the players, he on camera during that, or after that interview, got up and touched all the microphones to basically say y'all are overreacting. That's kind of the message it seemed like he was sending. But then you remember when Eric was doing the podcast with me, he talked about how he heard that Rudy Gobert was just playing too fucking much, touching people's stuff and just making a big joke out of it. And then, yeah, he had corona, and Donovan Mitchell had corona, and hey, you know, I didn't know that Rudy Gobert was considered an unlikable player in the NBA, because one thing I hadn't noticed, there was a tweet I saw earlier, and it was like, you noticed that when he came down with the virus, there weren't a ton of well wishes his way from players within the league. And you know, the NBA is like a brotherhood. Anytime anything happens, everybody outpours support. And come to think of it, the only support I really saw on Twitter came from Evan Fournier, and I believe they're from the same place, so it was just kind of like, you know, that's his man's, and he came to his defense, but wished him well. But that's really kind of the only one I saw. I didn't see, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm okay with being corrected, but I don't remember a LeBron James well wishes post, and that was what the dude really pointed out. He was like, LeBron James shows love really to everybody and well wishes everybody. So when something happens that's very public and he don't send a well wish to you, you know you in some type of situation. And of course, the day that happened, the memes came out and everybody was saying that Rudy Gobert shut down the NBA, but Apparently, it goes deeper with Donovan Mitchell because right now, when did that happen now? That happened almost a month ago. We're pretty much right at that mark now. Whole thing happened like a month ago. When it happened, we heard that there was a rift, and I remember that was something me and Eric had talked about as well. But I thought, okay, yeah, he's understandably mad. His teammate was being a fucking idiot, got him sick, and that'll probably be patched up. Just a quick reminder for everybody to check out the sponsors of this video. Both Tax Defense and Writer Junkie links can be found in the comment section and description of this video. But now we're talking, a month later, and I believe they're all cured of it now, right? Or not, cured, but their body fought it off. They're good now. They're healthy now. So Gobert doesn't have it. I'm pretty sure Mitchell doesn't have it anymore. I know Marcus Smart doesn't. And yeah, the report comes out today, April 10th, that he's reluctant to fix, whatever they have there. And so this is why I love reading NBA books so much. This is why I always say I love hearing players say what's on their mind in interviews, because we really know so little of the day-to-day between these players. We don't hear their conversations. We don't see their bus rides. We don't see a lot of things. Despite having social media and having them be able to share their thoughts on a whim, there's a whole lot of things we don't know. And that's why this is interesting here, because I'm like, okay, I understand you were mad when he got you sick, or possibly because, again, we don't even actually know. Maybe Mitchell had it first and gave it to Gobert, but of course, because of the optics, it definitely looks like Gobert did it. But okay, a month has passed, and y'all are both healthy and y'all are good, and we just kind of ride this thing out. What else is there that that has that causes this? Because here's the thing. The first thing people do is they jump to it and say, oh, who actually knows if this is true? Donovan Mitchell hasn't said anything. Well, that's actually kind of the issue here. Is I noticed throughout the season, a lot of players, like off the top of my head, Lou Williams, they'll normally use Twitter and their platform as a vehicle to kill bullshit stories or things that they think are bullshit, or they'll at least try to put a front on it, because I'm pretty sure sometimes there's something credible that comes out, but the player just doesn't want the noise around their locker room, so they say something. Well, it's interesting. I just had to pause to go take care of something, and I had happened to look at my phone. Mitchell tweeted 4 minutes ago as I'm talking right now, and all he's talking about is a shoe release. That's the only tweet he has on his page since a day ago, and this whole story has been trending the whole day, so it's not like you don't see it, right? We know he's on Twitter, and you see your name trending, you see the story trending, you see Gobert trending, and my only point is, he could do whatever he wants, he's a grown man, but you could easily kill this if it was a non-story, so the people that are out there saying, oh, this is just the media doing its thing, blah blah blah, I just know, like, if it was me, and if I was like, if I was super famous, and let's say I was on a team like Donovan Mitchell right now, and there was a story running between, trying to basically, showing a rift between me and my teammate. If I even had, let's say the rift was true, but I had a desire to kill it in the media, I could do that easily. You could do that in 2 seconds. You could retweet the story and put a cap on it, and then everybody's gonna go shit on the media story in that thread. They're gonna, tell them they're fake news and all that. That's all you would have to do, even if it was true. And yeah, by not addressing it at all, it makes that, the silence speaks. The silence is loud, and him not addressing it at all does make it seem like there is something here. And so that's interesting, because of course there's an NBA side to this. It's like, okay, so let's say we do get back to play in another 3 months. Are they gonna be cool, or what's gonna happen there? The Jazz do have some decisions to make as well, with who they're paying and what are they gonna do there, because team chemistry does matter. It's not always about just having great players on the floor together or the best players on the floor. Chemistry is a thing. But that's all stuff. Obviously there's a moratorium right now, so we can't even begin to talk about all of that, and maybe that's a good thing for the Jazz, because there's a lot of time to, if they want to mend whatever's going on here, there's a lot of time for them to do that. But the thing that I'm wondering is, damn, like, Donovan, if this is true and he hasn't refuted it, he's really mad over this. And I get it. You'll say, like, I get it from the standpoint of, damn, bro, you were playing way too much, and it's not like he was playing at a point where we didn't know anything about this. Of course, in a month, we know it's way more serious than a lot of us thought, but we knew enough about it not to, go being stupid on purpose. And so him being stupid on purpose is like, okay, you gave it to me, I could have had it for 2 weeks, I was with people, I could have been with my brothers, I could have been with my family, could have gave it to them. As far as I know, I don't think he ended up giving it to anybody else, Donovan Mitchell, like his family anyways. Like, we hadn't heard, we heard Carl, I actually hadn't heard the update on that either. I know Carl Towns' mother, didn't they say she was like in a the medically induced coma. So okay, that would make sense. She's probably a little bit better by now because I've heard nothing, and that's been like weeks. So yeah, definitely hope she's good. But yeah, we never heard anything about Mitchell's family members, because then I really then I would truly understand the blood here. I'm like, bro, you being stupid. It looks like it, you know, could put a family member at risk, or could have put one of my family members at risk, which it could have. But I'm saying if it actually happened, then I really get the blood there. Now I'm like, that's why when I tweeted the story out, I had the emoji that where the dude's kind of like scratching his face, because not that Donovan Mitchell doesn't have any reason to be mad, but I'm trying to understand, like, damn, this mad? He's this hot about this a month later? That makes me think that there was, you know, something before that. But from everything that I've ever heard or seen, I think they were cool before this. So, but again, there's just a lot we don't know. This is, hey man, this is why I collect NBA books. This is why I read NBA books, because these are the stories that you get years later. So shout out to Donovan Mitchell's future book in when we gonna get that book? About the year 2040, I would say. 20 years is a bit stiff. 2035, 2036. Shout out to that Donovan Mitchell book coming out, if we're still around by then. Pick that up and we can figure out what really happened there. And yeah, that was one of the things that hurt the most during Kobe's tragedy. Aside from, you know, the complete human element of it, one of the biggest disappointments for me was, like, man, I was really looking forward to getting a book from him in his own words, all about his career, because I didn't feel like the book that he wrote, what was that called? It's the big one with the pictures. I have it sitting on my dresser. God forgive me. Kobe, forgive me. I'm not doing enough right now. But yeah, the book that he sold, I was like, I wanted more of just like an in-depth, you know, him telling stories about him and Shaq and all that. The other one seemed like it was more of just a Hooper's book and trying to spread some knowledge, which was cool, but I really wanted one from the heart. So that's why, like, I'm reading the Andre Iguodala book right now, because it's just all about his career. That's what I really wanted from Kobe. I don't think I'm ever gonna get over that. Anyways, yeah, Mitchell is fuming over this, and we'll see where it goes. Again, Jazz fans, there's no reason to hit the panic button, obviously, because we haven't heard this address from either side. Oh yeah, Joe Ingles tweet. Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. The only addressing that we've got of this situation, or that I've seen, is from Joe Ingles. And a Twitter account asked Joe Ingles, like, so is this true? Are y'all really this mad at Rudy Gobert? And Ingles said, the only thing I'm mad about, the only thing I'm pissed about, is that I can't go to his house right now for a meal. He has a really good chef. And so, I mean, that only says that he's not mad at him, though. He didn't speak for anybody else. He didn't even try to speak for anybody else. Joe feels how and again, there we go. That's kind of more of what I expected. If we're just talking about the virus itself, kind of expected it to be like, yeah, they were mad when it happened, but damn, like an entire rift. Like, let's be real here for a second. You know, if it's about shutting down the NBA season, at a minimum, the fans were definitely cooked. We were gonna have no fan games, but there was really no way to stop this from happening. You could follow the precautions and not be an idiot, but at the end of the day, with all the traveling and even the minimum amount of people you would have to have for an NBA game to run, you were gonna have to close the NBA at some point. That was why the night that it happened, I wasn't even shocked. Eric was here. We were doing the podcast, and you know, it happened after we got done, and I wasn't in the least bit surprised. I was like, yeah, that was the next move. And then of course the lockdowns. You could see all this coming before it happens, which is why I'm kind of worried for what the near and distant future holds. Speaking of what the near future holds, apparently we are going to be getting a horse competition. Trae Young, Zach LaVine. Let me look this up for you. I can't keep saying things and not even having a clear idea of. Hold on. Okay, yeah, I'm glad I looked this up, because I am as disappointed as I thought I was gonna be. I don't want to sound like a fucking brat, and I get this is all we can have right now, but damn. Okay, it's a horse competition. It's gonna be shown on ESPN. It is going to be on. It's going to begin on April 12th, so 2 days from now. It's going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern. We are going to be seeing Chris Paul, Trae Young, Tamika Catchings, Zach LaVine, another WNBA All-Star Alley. I'm not going to try to pronounce that last name. Mike Conley Jr., Chauncey Billups, and Paul Pierce. And word for word, they're going to be matching shots against one another in a single elimination horse competition from their respective isolated home courts. ESPN NBA commentator Mark Jones will serve as the official host. Alright, so we've reached this point. When I first heard of this competition, I did hear that it was going to be from their home courts, but it got confirmed, and I could have sworn I thought they were getting together for some reason. I thought they were going to do it in the same gym, which again, I guess that would I just read like 8 names or something like that. I read enough names where it's kind of like people would kind of be, the FBI might pull up at your spot. You get this kind of gathering on TV. FBI might pull up on you. So they are going to be doing this just from their perspective. They're not going to be in a gym together, so it's gonna be interesting to see how they stitch this together. Can you hear my disappointment? Yeah, because low-key coming into the podcast, I actually thought that, for some reason, I thought that they were going to be doing this together, which then I thought would have been kind of cool. So here's what I think. This sounds like something if we ever get our way of life back. It does sound like something that could be fun when everyone is together in the same gym, a horse competition during off-season, because the NBA off-season gets extremely dry at a point. Like right now, we're still, holding out hope and trying to find ways that the NBA playoffs can happen. So there's discussion like, oh, we still might see this, we still might see that, but y'all have survived enough off seasons to know there's certain points during the summer where it's just like dead heat and there is nothing going on. There's besides Instagram workout videos that 90% of them don't translate to the actual court. But besides that, yeah, there's really nothing going on in the basketball world after the NBA is done with their summer league and things like that. So then, yeah, I think this could be a cool idea just for that dead heat when there's nothing going on, just so there's some type of basketball. For this seems like something I'm probably just gonna throw to the back like I did the 2K competition, which I'm just gonna keep it real with you. I don't know if it's even going on right now. I don't spend a ton of time on social media, so when I hopped on after I was streaming on Twitch the other day, I saw a tweet from Trae Young, actually, from Trae Young to Ronnie 2K. Ronnie 2K said something about "you blew it," and Trae Young retweeted him and was like, "No, you blew it," and he capitalized "you," and everybody in the comment section was like racking on Ronnie. I never got to the bottom of what that situation was actually about. But anyways, yeah, that's just a long way to say I was paying no attention after the first day to the 2K competition. I don't know who won or anything, or if that's even over. This one, I mean, it seems like it says it's beginning on Sunday. Okay, check it out. Wait, yeah, that's the thing. It says this is beginning on Sunday. Oh, there was more here. Okay. State Farm is going to be donating more than $200,000 on behalf of the participants to charities. Okay, that's pretty cool. That's charities focused on coronavirus response efforts. That's dope. The donation builds on the more than $74 million that has been contributed by the NBA. Yep. So that part is absolutely dope, definitely. But the way they're doing this, yeah, so there's an actual schedule for this. See, so the first part is going to happen on Sunday, and they have it organized. They have a quarterfinals group 1, that's Trae Young and Chauncey Billups, and so they're organized by groups. And damn, yeah, on Sunday it's going to start at 7 and end at 11. And then on Thursday, April 16th, there's going to be the quarterfinals encore presentations, the group 1 semifinals, who's ever made it there, and then there's going to be the horse championship game. I mean, yeah, it's dope that they're donating to efforts, but I don't think I'm gonna be. Fam, I might be doing any number of things while this is on. I might be streaming. I might just be reading Iguodala's book. I'll find a way, bro. But that's there if you want it, that is there. And again, shout out to the NBA for trying to be creative. There's just not much you can really do at this time. This is the NBA, trying to put entertainment out right now is really like how a lot of us are just trying to cope with life on a day-to-day basis, because I'm sure a lot of you had things that you were working on. I know I did. I had things that I was working on in my outside life, and now I'm just kind of here like, yo, what the fuck? Like, what am I supposed to do about that? And I guess this is kind of the NBA right now with the 2K competition. I don't think it was that good when I first started watching it. This horse competition I don't have high hopes for, but they're trying, fam. They're trying. It's like my little brothers keep every other day we talk about like what's gonna happen with school and graduation, and I keep telling them, I'm like, fam, everyone's just like coping. No one has a real plan for like a pandemic that may come back in a second wave. Nobody has any like real plan on how to do something perfectly or get it right the first time. It's just difficult right now. It's difficult across the board, and so we have an isolated NBA horse competition. Yeah. So the Diaries of a Quarantined Celtics Fan. This came about because at some point this week the '08 Celtics were being talked about again. Maybe it wasn't. It probably wasn't a trending topic. Maybe it came from when I know I was watching, the NBA was showing a replay of the Celtics and Pistons Eastern Conference Finals Game 5. Yeah, Game 5 from 2008. I know Kendrick Perkins retweeted something about it and was talking about the numbers that he posted, and of course everyone was calling him annoying because people love to fuck with Kendrick Perkins over Twitter, but you know, definitely wouldn't step to him in real life more than likely. But that's besides the point though. This Celtics team, this '08 team, has been in the news multiple times in the last year, and we are in the year 2020 currently, and you know, when this whole thing was coming up, I think the whole thing about them being overrated was around the 2019, so still about a good decade. And people have made a habit out of calling this team overrated and annoying, calling them the most annoying championship team of all time. And they trend mostly because, well, first of all, Paul Pierce is still in the media. Kevin Garnett has always been a trash talker, and he still, even in his post career, is still talking shit. The latest thing is he doesn't want anything to do with the quote snake owner of the Timberwolves. He doesn't want his jersey retired there. So yeah, and then Ray Allen as well. The Ray Allen drama from when he left them and went to the Heat, that happened in the year 2012 because it was for the 2013 season. Yeah, I got that right. Off the dome, boy. Yeah, so that happened back then, and of course, I think at this point, the only one of them that's actually still cool with him is Paul Pierce. I think Paul Pierce reconciled with him. I know they had a picture together, but I don't think KG or anybody else really ever did they? Wow. Yeah, I don't think anybody else ever got cool with him again. Cause yeah, they had that they had their championship. That's what happened not too long ago, maybe a year and a half ago, maybe even 2 years now, when the Celtics team got together. Yeah, it had to be 2018 when they got together and they took a trip together. The '08 team, Ray Allen was left out of that. Same reason, of course, he's not gonna probably have his jersey retired ever in Boston, because his teammates are too salty to ever go to that. And yeah, so they are in the news for any number of reasons. So we will definitely get to the '08 Celtics. Should I do that first? Cause, well, I guess I'll just mix it up a little bit. It's interesting because the Celtics were the first team that I ever truly followed. They were the first team that, as a fan, like as a real fan, like I'm a fan of this team. Before that, of course, I liked T-Mac because I had all his gear and stuff. I've explained that story 1,000 times, but I was never actually an Orlando Magic fan. I just knew T-Mac was cool as shit. I loved his shoes. I had the jersey, and in the NBA Live, he was bomb. So, there goes that. But as far as like, being a diehard Magic fan, I have very few memories of actually watching Magic games and cheering for the Orlando Magic, thankfully. I remember Pat Garrity though. I think Pat Garrity might be the most forgotten player in NBA history. I don't think anybody, because is he even in any of the 2Ks? I don't know. All this is besides the point. I became a Celtics fan, of course, once the Big Three got there, and I was a kid back then. I was like in the 6th grade, and I've already explained a million times, I knew how good KG, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen were. And so when that summer happened, that fateful day happened, and they joined forces, they already had, who did they get first? They got Ray Allen first. They got Ray Allen through that trade. That's an interesting story of itself, because Ray Allen actually did not know that he was going to be leaving that franchise. He had a conversation. I read his book. It's in his book, and he had a conversation with the general manager, and they talked about their future and everything. And nope, you're off to Boston next. And I mean, that's probably better for his career anyways. Then the draft trade happens. They get Kevin Garnett, and so when that happened, that was big news. That was very big news, and I told my dad right away. I was like, yeah, so the Celtics just won the championship that summer. That happened in the summer of 2007. I was like, yeah, so the Celtics are your new champion. And my dad is like, he had this weird thing, like he's definitely a bandwagon fan back then. Love him to death, but he's a LeBron fan, but then he was also with the Spurs as well. So I don't know. That's a whole different thing. But yeah, so he was like, nah, it's still gonna be the Spurs, because the Spurs, this happened in summer '07. So yeah, the Spurs were fresh off a title. That's really interesting to think. That original Big Three right there, and then the Celtics Big Three right after. But yeah, Spurs, defending champions. He's like, yeah, nah, I still got San Antonio. I was like, cool, let's make a bet on it. What did I bet? I probably bet him for something like $100 or something like that. And if I lost, I don't know what he was gonna get in return if I lost. I was broke. So yeah, but $100 is like a couple of thousand when you're that young as well. So I made that bet, and that is how I started following Boston. And then I just never left. Like, even through the times where we had Rondo that season, and that was it, and then we ended up trading him, and then, oh god, I'm having flashbacks of Chris Humphries and Marshawn Brooks at the press conference, knowing that, or thinking that we were about to be in a infinite rebuilding process, which did not last that long. Thank Danny Ainge for that. So yeah, that brings us right to the '08 season anyway. So I'm a fan of the Celtics that year, and you know, like I said, still a fan today, about 13 years later. And it's interesting. You know, looking back in history at that. The weird thing I always think about is when I was a kid, 13 years prior to wherever I was so much longer than it is now. So, and I always, like, sometimes I mark my life through NBA history. So let's say it was the year 2010. Well, 13 years ago from 2010 would have been 1997. You're talking about Jordan era still. And when I would see Jordan era highlights as a kid in 2010, that shit seemed ancient to me. I'm like, bro, this is this is back in the days of like horses and carriages getting around, like on some Red Dead shit, right? That's what it felt like. But here we are now, and I'm like, okay, 2020, 13 years ago. Wow, is that, yeah, this summer, right? This summer will make 13 years ago that whole thing went down with Boston. And I'm like, that does not feel, because I really lived it all and I was really entrenched in it all. And it's like, that doesn't feel like 13 years at all. It doesn't feel like a long time even though you know it's been a long time. But the interesting thing in living through all of that and following it as intensely as I did is always seeing the revisionist history that happens, and not just with this team or whatever, but just in the NBA as a whole. That's partly why I sent that tweet out the other day where I asked, did anybody have examples of teams where there's a team, right? Then there's let's say it's a highlight, it's an NBA YouTube video, it's a highlight reel, or even it's just a tweet, right? And people see a picture of the squad and they call the squad stacked. You always see that these days in squads that are like a decade plus older. You always see this team and it's like, oh, this team was stacked. But you remember watching that team and you remember living through the era of that team and what the expectations for them were, and it's like they weren't actually stacked, you know? That's why I asked that question. I was asking what teams could people name off the top of their heads that now people look at pictures and they overreact to seeing a bunch of familiar faces. That happens all the time. And I think it works both ways. I think it works in pumping teams up to a stature that they really weren't, and it degrades some teams. There's plenty of examples, but we're not going to get into narrative wasteland right now. That '08 season, the Celtics, it was, you know why they're so prominent in history despite only having won one championship? Because I think that's most people's problems. If I could get to it, I think most people's problems with this team is that they won one title, and they only made 2 NBA finals. They only ever got back in 2010 and got ever so close to winning it. They were a couple of, about a minute and a half away from winning it, really. And that team still gets talked about today. Its members still talk. Its members, obviously with Ray Allen, they have beef. And so they find ways to be in the media. And so at a certain point, people are like, yo, what gives? Like, his team did not three-peat. They weren't around forever. These things didn't happen for this team to still be getting talked about, or for their members to be so loud this many years later. And I think that's where a lot of the overrated talk comes from, right? I know there's probably some videos out there talking about why they're overrated. I've never actually watched them. You'll be surprised how much I don't watch YouTube videos based around, like, let's just put it, NBA YouTube. You'd be surprised. Like, my YouTube playlist is like stars and space and shit like that. It really is not. It's really not basketball YouTube as much anymore. I contribute and I keep it moving. So maybe there's probably some good arguments out there for why they are overrated, but I think the bulk of it comes from they pop up and people are like, yo, this team is annoying, what the fuck. People always have a habit of calling things overrated, though. I noticed that too. I noticed that as well. In social media these days, everything is overrated. Everything. Every player is overrated. This player's prime is overrated. He actually wasn't that good. I think people have a habit of calling just everything overrated, but that's also a different conversation. It just does help to keep in mind that Celtics team in '08 did end up winning 66 games. So they went 66-16. I believe that's off the dome. You can fact check me on that one. I'm pretty sure I'm right on that. Kevin Garnett ends up winning Defensive Player of the Year. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if this record is held, but at the time that was the biggest turnaround for an NBA team, because the year before that they were sorry. It was Paul Pierce, and I believe I did a video about a year ago and they were talking about how if KG, because originally I think KG was about to get traded to Phoenix somewhere, and if the Celtics hadn't got Ray Allen or KG, they were just gonna go ahead and move on and ship Pierce off. So they were one of those teams that had a lone star, and they were desolate, and they needed to find something to do with him, to build around him, or he needed to fucking bounce. That's kind of the same situation the Wolves were in with KG, and that's how he ended up getting bounced. And so, yeah, that just kind of by virtue of going from one all-star to three, they had a huge turnaround. They were a monster defensive squad. They get to the NBA playoffs that year, and they play the eighth-seeded Hawks. These were the Hawks that had Joe Johnson. I'm pretty sure they had Al Horford at that time. Josh Smith, that Atlanta Hawks team. I think Mike Bibby was on there too. They take 7 games to beat that team, which was a really weird series. I remember, I just remember that night that Zaza Pachulia and KG got into it. I remember that was a fun moment. But that was weird. Again, off the dome, I believe there were a lot of blowouts in that series too. The home team won every game, and that's the same thing that happened in the second series against the Cavaliers and LeBron James. And one thing I had kind of forgotten about until I became an NBA YouTuber and started making videos about that series was how damn close Boston really was to losing that game. Because I still remember Game 7 with the Atlanta Hawks and how I just had no fear. Growing up in that era with the Celtics and the Big Three, there was certain series or certain games where I'm just like, okay, they're not going to lose to this team. Specifically, one that comes to mind is in 2010 when they played the Miami Heat. Dwayne Wade went off when they were down 3-0. I think he scored like 50 points. And then I was like, okay, cool, they got their one game, but now they have to go back to Boston. We're about to take that, and we did. But yeah, in game 7 was like that against the Atlanta Hawks, because I remember my dad telling me, he was like, yeah, they're saying this is going to be the biggest upset in history. And I was like, Dad, relax. I'm like, relax. The home team has won every game. This is Game 7 in Boston. It was unthinkable. I'm like, this team is not losing Game 7 to the Hawks. I wish I remembered more details about that, though, because now, again, I was younger back then, so all I really knew was, look, we got the 3 All-Stars. They don't have home court advantage. We do. So that's all I really thought about. If that Hawk series had happened now at my age, I'd probably would have been freaked the fuck out. Like, what are we doing here? Like, how did we get here? How did this happen? But yeah, back then I had absolutely no fear, and I believe Boston won that Game 7 pretty handedly. But the one against the Cavs, again, that's the one, because history has beaten up on LeBron's Cavs so much. Oh my god, you would really think that LeBron was on the court by himself. You never hear about Daniel Gibson having a good game to put away the Pistons in that 07 year. You hear nothing about that team being good defensively, and that's specifically weird because living around that time with LeBron's Cavs, it was so much different back then than it is in hindsight. In hindsight, people are looking at it like it's just this desolate squad that had no business being where they were. Okay, that's definitely partly true. Obviously, that's partly true. But yeah, if you could just go back and live around those times, around like 2010, and hear what the commentators and everyone was saying about the Cavs and how deep they were and how the Celtics couldn't beat them. Oh my god, I swear. Go back and watch LeBron's last game as a Cavalier in 2010, that one, right before he left there. The dude, Mike Breen, right? Mike Breen, yeah, he calls it an upset. He says it out of it with his own words. He calls it an upset. That's so crazy because looking back, you always see this picture with the big four and LeBron James standing in the middle, and they're like, this is what LeBron had to go against. But at that time that we were living through it, the Celtics were not supposed to have won that series, and that's so weird explaining it to people who either didn't actually pay attention back then or just became basketball fans. That is the weirdest thing for me. But anyways, yeah, that Game 7 against Cleveland, that's one where I don't have memories in my head of being scared of actually losing that game. And you go back and watch the tape of that and that duel between Paul Pierce and LeBron, and you're like, man, if a couple of the shots would have bounced the other way, like they might have gotten beaten, bro. They might have lost to that Cavaliers team. And that Cavaliers team may have gone to the finals. I mean, they would have played Detroit again. They would have played the Detroit team, more or less the one that they'd beaten the last year to go to the NBA finals. So who knows what would have happened there. But they didn't. And that's where it gets really weird because it took them 7 to beat the Hawks. It took them 7 to beat LeBron and the Cavs. And then they beat the Pistons in 6, and then they beat the Lakers in 6. How fucking backwards is that? That's where I used to think. I think when I was younger, I used to say that the Celtics. When I was younger, I used to think that they just played to the level of their competition. I was like, how do you? The Pistons were clearly That was a team by then they had been in the conference finals since, wow, every year since '04, right? That's the weird thing nobody remembers about that Pistons squad is how long they stayed around. They actually might have been since '03. So they made the finals in '04. They made the finals in '05. In '06, the Heat beat them to go to the finals and play the Mavs. In '07, the Cavs beat them. Yeah, so they stayed they hung around the conference finals. The Pistons hung around for quite some time, and then they traded Chelsea Billups for Allen Iverson. That's I don't think that franchise has been the same since. But yeah, that is a very weird thing. But of course, now here we are years later, and that's one of the things that people used to call that team overrated. Is they're like, oh, look how long it took them to beat those two squads who had no business being in that series. And then that's always just a weird thing because you look, like I just said, you look back at it and it's like, yeah, when the time came to get it done, they did. And of course, then they play the Lakers in the finals without Andrew Bynum, and they end up winning that series. They end up doing it with one of the more impressive comebacks in NBA Finals history. So one of the things people don't remember is, well, I'm pretty sure they remember it because they spent a lot of time tearing down the man's legacy when he was here. What game was that? Game 5, whatever game they took a 3-1 lead. So yeah, they took that 3-1 lead. The Celtics were down like 20 plus in that game in LA, and they came back and stole that, and yeah, took that 3-1 lead. And then game 6 happened, and it was an absolute massacre. And people always look back at that and say, oh, if Bynum had played that series, the Lakers would have won. And I never play. Well, that's a fucking lie. Of course I play the what if game. Like a lot of the 2K videos I make are based off of what if. What ifs are always fun. But I actually had a video idea for that not too long ago where I was going to be doing something based off of looking back at all the injuries that changed every season. Because if you look back through most seasons, right? I think this is a video idea I had in like 2018, so it's been in the documents for a while. But I was going to look back and say, like, every single season nearly, every single playoffs nearly, you can look back at one moment or one injury where it was like that changed everything. That changed that team's fortune, and whatever team won that year, maybe they wouldn't have won if that didn't happen. Like, you can almost do that for every playoffs, every final series. Hell, you can do it for the Celtics and Lakers rematch, because as much as people love roasting Kendrick Perkins, I don't think they understand he was very important to that team defensively. Dwight Howard called the prime Dwight Howard. We're talking about Dwight Howard, Defensive Player of the Year Dwight. Dwight that was going to give you a consistent, 22 points and double-digit rebounds. That Dwight called Kendrick Perkins his toughest defender in his prime. And yeah, if you have a valid opinion of Dwight, as in you actually watched him and you know he belongs in the Hall of Fame and you knew how good he was back then, you're not one of the people asking if Rudy fucking Gobert is better than prime Dwight. That was a thing. That was a thing I actually saw somebody argue once. You saw the NBA Twitter police. It happened. I love Twitter. But yeah, Kendrick Perkins was very important, and so he went down in game 6 of that series, which I want to be clear, I think LA was going to win that game either way. Game 6 seemed like a momentum game where they just kind of had it from the beginning. But game 7 with Kendrick Perkins, I don't know. I don't know. But again, that's something you don't really see me do much of because the Celtics had plenty of chances to win that game. They were up a lot of that game. I think they were up by like 13 at one point. And at a certain point, everybody just got stuck in mud and nobody could score. And of course, there's that Ron Artest 3. A Funky Diabetic tweeted about that earlier because there was a question asking what NBA moment do you have in your mind that still kills you, basically. And he was like, the Ron Artest 3. Every time I watch it, I still think it's gonna miss. And I didn't say nothing. I didn't interact with the tweet, but I'm lurking in the shadows like, yeah, I still feel that one. I remember exactly where I was in my house where I was watching that. I remember, I don't even think I really reacted to it. I think my arms just slumped when Artest hit that 3. He did that jab step because the Celtics were building momentum. They were streaking threes, and then he hit that one and put them up 6, and I think my shoulders just slumped because I think I had a realization right then that LA was not going to lose on their home floor, that the game was pretty much over regardless of what happened, even though I think Rasheed Wallace hit a 3 right after that. That just made it hurt worse. But yeah, that definitely, and that thing with Perkins, that's another interesting thing about revisionist history because, oh gosh, yeah, especially for a player like Perkins, right, where there's really not highlights for him. I have never looked on YouTube. I probably should look it up and see if they have YouTube of Kendrick Perkins playing defense on people, but let's be real, nobody's looking up fucking Kendrick Perkins defensive highlights. I don't even think we've reached that point in the quarantine yet. But so because he didn't average great numbers, because he really didn't look like he was in the best shape, because there was zero flash to his game, and he was just all about anchoring a defense and making certain rotations and, you know, bothering shots in the paint. Those are the things that get lost in NBA history. Those are the contributions that get lost to a championship team. And so people will look back, and if, like he did the other day, if he tweets about himself or the numbers that he had in one series, people would be like, shut the fuck up, you scrub. he'll start trending because people will, you know, apparently be trying to tell him how trash he was. And then, of course, if it gets brought up in an argument that Kendrick Perkins was not, you know, playing at the end of that 2010 series, people are going to go, oh, Kendrick Perkins, he was the difference between you guys winning that series? Like, nah. And yeah, because people they don't really understand his value. Nobody probably understands his value better than Celtics fans, because I still wholeheartedly believe trading him in 2011 was one of the biggest mistakes that led to their downfall. Of course, you get to the 2011 playoff series with the Heat, and then everybody Delonte West was injured. I think Jermaine O'Neal was hurt. Rondo was hurt. Like, everybody they brought in to support that team, because after they lost in 2010, the front office was like, okay, we really need to get a supporting cast for these guys. They're getting old. And by the 2011 season, that entire supporting cast had crumbled. But not having Kendrick Perkins, especially for an aging Kevin Garnett defensively, that was gigantic. And Ainge was betting on Shaquille O'Neal being there and being healthy for that series, and obviously that went south. But, you know, that 2008 Celtics team, their contribution to NBA history, the reason that you hear about them all the time, and the reason that you're always going to hear about them, amongst the other things I already named, because they have a long-standing beef with Ray Allen that's still not been solved, and KG likes to talk and says things that he even shouldn't. Like, when was that? That was actually a couple of months ago, right before Uncut Gems came out. And KG was talking about how they made LeBron, they broke him and things like that. I think he was just, you know, talking shit for movie promotion. But yeah, even I thought that was ridiculous. And I was the biggest Celtics fan during that time, but I thought that was fucking ridiculous. In the frame that he put it, in the context that he put it, I don't think he really explained it as well as he could have. Anyways, aside from all of that, the thing that people gotta realize is that 08 team, the reason you'll always hear about them is because they really influenced a gigantic amount of time in the NBA. Because notice when you talk about their big three, you're talking about something different than other big threes that you might have seen. And so again, when people look back at Rodman, Jordan, and Pippen, often people forget that Rodman by the 98 finals was not really the Rodman that you might have expected from, or the Rodman that you think about. He really wasn't the Rodman that you think about anymore. Pippen wasn't really the Pippen that you think about anymore. You know, there's different things that happen that get lost in time there. Or if you look at the big three with San Antonio, the one that won right before the Celtics got together, you got Ginobili, who his talent was probably hidden a lot by the fact that by the role that he was playing for that San Antonio team, and the way San Antonio did things, it was just never that flashy. So it was just a little bit different. The Celtics big three all had a chance to be flashy and do their things before they got together. That's the difference, and that's why they stick out so much, because we didn't get to see Tony Parker go be, you know, the superstar point guard of a different team. We didn't see Ginobili go be the superstar shooting guard of a different team before joining forces with Tim Duncan. It didn't work like that. And so the Celtics get together by it's something pretty much like nobody really ever talks about the original all the way back into the 70s, right? Or the early 70s, or shit, what was that, 69 actually? Wilt Chamberlain, Elgin Baylor, and Wilt Chamberlain. Yeah, okay. Wilt Chamberlain, Elgin Baylor, and Jerry West. Yeah, if you go back and you Google that image, actually, you Google that image, there's a picture of those three, and it says, does three superstars make a super team? That was a thing with that. Nobody ever really talks about that because, of course, by then, you know, Elgin Baylor lost his form really quickly and never even actually won with that team. But that's something a little bit similar, because you saw Jerry West stardom, you saw Elgin Baylor stardom, and then you saw Wilt Chamberlain stardom, and all of a sudden they're on a team together. And so, of course, this one takes place 30-something years later. And the Celtics, you had already seen KG be an MVP on the Wolves of a Western Conference Finals team, right? They took the Lakers 6 that year. They could have possibly been in the finals. So you saw KG's superstar talent. You saw Paul Pierce's talent. That's, again, back to the revisionist history thing. That's what's so interesting, because Paul Pierce is a guy who, even if he brings a lot of the slander on himself these days, he does get slandered a lot. It gets to a point where people are starting to, Yeah, Twitter is just an interesting place. I'm glad Twitter it does not speak for the world, but yeah, it gets to this thing where people talk about him not even being that good. But meanwhile, I'm reading Iguodala's book, who's a player who actually had to defend him and actually had to play against him and knows the craft and knows what it takes. And he was talking about how good of a player Paul Pierce was and knowing all the work that it took to be the type of player that he actually was. Those type of things fascinate me. I'm a fucking nerd when it comes to this stuff. So yeah, you'd already seen Paul Pierce do his thing before and the East was terrible back then, but yeah, they did get to a conference finals, I believe. And then you've seen Ray Allen. You'd already seen Ray Allen on the Seattle team, and they never really went that far. You had the Bucks before that. Of course, that team did go to the conference finals. They were actually nearly in the finals in 01 instead of the Sixers. But yeah, again, you've seen all these players just shine on their own. And so they got together, and it's just like, yo, this is insanity. And that inspired a lot of the moves that we saw after that. And that directly affected the moves we saw after that, let's be real. Because once that juggernaut happened, the Pistons were on their way out. By the time the Celtics got together, that 08 year was the last year that Pistons team was relevant. That's the last time the Pistons were relevant. Oh my goodness, that is the last time. So yeah, at that point it was like, okay, when is LeBron gonna break through? And LeBron to break through has to, contend with this team who really the only thing that stood in front of them making 3 finals was KG being injured in 09, because they would have probably made 3 then. They would have rematched the Lakers in 09 more than likely. So once that doesn't happen, LeBron has said this on his own. LeBron literally said, I can't remember what book I read it in, but he said on his own that Celtics team taught. Actually, that was an interview he said it in. It's like that Celtics team taught him, like, you need amazing teammates. You need great teammates to do great things. And of course they took it overboard with the party, but it was like, all right, bet. So the Celtics got their thing, and the thing that people don't really remember is they weren't over the hill when they got together. They were in like their last really, really good year. Paul Pierce, KG, and Ray Allen. That's the thing that hurt, because after that, KG got injured. Then Paul started dealing with injuries. Later down the road, Allen had ankle injuries. They all aged really quickly. Braun was like, bet. Went and got Wade and Bosh together. They were still young when they got together too. So that's where the whole party came from. And that's where the whole idea that they were going to win like 7 championships came from, because like they were still in their 20s and they really didn't seem like they had a physical downturn in sight yet. And so they go and do that. Of course, because of the heat, people started thinking that, oh, we need big threes. We need to build the craziest team possible to win. That inspires a movement in the NBA. KD later down the road says LeBron's career path inspired him. He felt free to do what he wanted to do because of what LeBron did. Oh, boom. Now let me get the fucking Warriors. We got the Warriors. We got the Warriors with Kevin Durant and Steph Curry. Yeah, that was... I wonder if it can ever get any worse than that. Let me not jinx it. I guess worse than that is having no NBA at all. That's really where we are right now. But yeah, that Celtics team, it was kind of like a domino effect, but also the fact that they inspired things, and they not inspired a whole generation, but they influenced the whole era. They really did influence the whole era, and in terms of how teams were built. Because when you think about it, that Celtics big 3. There wasn't a whole lot of regular basketball after that. There just wasn't. Like, think about it. You had that big 3 happens, right? Because before the big 3, what did you have? The finals before that was the Spurs and the Cavaliers. Finals before that was your regular Dallas Mavericks team and the Heat. So no real super team there. You had your duos and whatnot, and Dirk trying to lead that team. Before them was the 05 finals, Spurs and Pistons. You see what I mean? So you just kind of have like your regular, they're really good teams, but nothing crazy like having 3 all NBA talents on the same squad that we've all seen try to lead their own squad. So that happens. The Celtics go to the finals. They get hurt the next year, so that doesn't work out. Go back to the finals again. Then from 2011 to 2014, you had the Miami Heat. The Warriors come up and give us a little bit of normalcy, but again, LeBron did go back to Cleveland and tried to form his own big 3, because Kevin Love was. I forgot that in this mix. Kevin Love was literally one of the top power forwards in the league at that time. We thought that was going to be almost equally as crazy. I personally didn't fear the Cavaliers when he left Miami. I actually kind of breathed a sigh of relief. I was more scared of Dwayne Wade and Bosh as his teammates than I was with Kyrie and Kevin Love. I even wrote something about that. But still, though, Kevin Love before pre-Cavaliers was nasty. So we were looking at that like, damn, another one, something close to it. Yeah, and then the Warriors happened. So we haven't had we haven't had a terribly large amount of just regular teams like pre-Boston since they happened. And so that's why you see so many posts about them. That's why people always take a look back at that era. It was really a shift, man. It was really a shift for better or for worse. Even as someone who grew up loving that Celtics team intensely, I would obviously say it was probably for worse, because I feel like as an NBA fan, I feel like a victim over these last over the 2010s, really, because all I wanted was what we had this year. That's all I ever wanted, was to come into a season and say, man, look at all these teams that can win the title. Look at all these duos. That's all I really wanted, because let's be real. It's hard, first of all, for a team to put together a trio of stars, and it's hard to do that successfully. It's hard to mix. There's not really enough talent out there as well, because once a certain team takes these three players, it's so many things have to work out for that to happen. It's so much easier to just have like a PG and a Kawhi, and who else do we have this year? Westbrook and Harden, LeBron and AD. That is so much easier. That is so much better. And we were finally back at that, and then the Rona. And then the Rona. That is all she wrote. Last note I guess I would say about that Celtics team is that people don't also take into full account the amount of years that they hung around as well. And I'm not saying any of this to I'm talking about oh, give them that credit. What I'm really saying here is people wonder why you hear so much about them. Well, it's because from 2008 to really 2013, that was a team that you had to keep your eye on. So that's a good 5-year span right there, because in 08 people like me just flat out said that they automatically win the championship if they don't get injured, and they did. 09, I think they made it to Christmas with only 4 losses, so that kind of shows you they were really right on their way back to the promised land if Kevin Garnett doesn't get hurt, at least to the finals. Who knows if they would have won, but I really think having to beat LeBron again and beating the Magic, I don't think that would have been too difficult with a KG playing like he was in 08 or something comparable. But they then retool. Again, Danny Ainge has always done a good job with this squad. They come back in 2010 and they ended up getting Nate Robinson there, and then you had Rasheed Wallace. I remember thinking Marquise Daniels was going to be an X factor too, but he got hurt from the start. He had a wrist problem, and we didn't see a whole lot of him. But yeah, that team, they were a 500 team to end the 2010 season. I remember they split the last games right down the middle. And so coming into the playoffs, they were a 4th seed. And I probably said this 100 times. I apologize if you followed me and supported me for a while and you've heard this story, but I'm going to keep talking about it until somebody fucking sends me the clip of Kenny Smith. Not Kenny Smith. Who said it? Yeah, no, it was Kenny Smith. Of Kenny Smith saying that the Bobcats could beat Boston that year. He did. The Bobcats were in the playoffs, or they were making a playoff run, and he was like, yeah, they're vulnerable this year. I think the Bobcats could beat them. Which is weird, because either it was somebody else that said that, or he flipped his tune once we got to the Cavaliers series. And I remember it was him, Charles Barkley, probably Ernie Johnson as well. And he was the only one on the panel. He was like, I actually want to say the Celtics can win this series. Ernie was the only one there with me, man. He was the only one in 2010 there with me saying that the Celtics could beat Cleveland. And and then that happened. And so they go back to the finals. Again, they come within a couple minutes of winning. And by then, 2011, they really stacked up. Then that's when they went and got Shaq, because LeBron left. And it's funny, I thought Shaq was going to go to Miami with LeBron. That's a funny story. It's kind of stupid. I remember LeBron James saying that, what did he say? There was 2 announcements that were going to happen tonight. If you remember watching The Decision, there was supposed to be 2 announcements. And I thought his first, I'm a kid back then, so I thought his first announcement was going to be the team he was going to. And I thought his second announcement was that Shaq was going to go with him. And so I thought Shaq was going to go to Miami with him. Ironically enough, it was Ilgauskas that ended up going with him. The second announcement was that the proceeds from that show were going to go to a charity. So that didn't keep any of the hate from coming his way. So I don't think that worked out it was supposed to. But yeah, so even then, that was a real battle, because it's okay, now LeBron's trying his own big 3 thing, and the Celtics looked like the better team that whole year, and it's really let's be real. The people look back now, and I wonder if some people will want to have it both ways, because now people look back and say, hey, the 11 Heat, that roster really wasn't ready. It was it was the 3 superstars, and it was whatever else they could find to make a roster out of what money they had left. I actually think for most of that season, the Celtics not only played like the better team and looked like the better team, they really were the better team until they got injured. That's how I feel about that one. And when they made that trade as well, I don't think they should have made that trade. But yeah, that ends up happening. They lose to Miami. Now that's when they started to look dead in the water. So 2011, Boston looks dead in the water. Then they come back in 2012, and that was what was so sweet about it, because I remember by that point we had Jeff Green. When did we trade for Jeff Green? Yeah, okay, we traded for Jeff Green in 2011 actually. Yeah, that's what happened, because not only did Danny Ainge want to have a more younger and athletic player in place of, not really in place of Kendrick Perkins, but just really worrying about LeBron James, I guess, at that point. I think he was also looking towards the future a bit as well, because Jeff Green, for a while, yes, there was a Celtics fan hope that Jeff Green was gonna be our next star. I remember him and LeBron, that duel that they had where LeBron dunked on Terry that night. I think, go look it up, that is actually a Dawkins duel. I'm pretty sure Jeff Green had like 30 something or 40 that night as well. So there were hopes for old Jeff. But coming into the lockout shortened season, he ended up having to have heart surgery. So bam, Jeff is gone for that season, which was supposed to be like our future plan. Who else got hurt that year? By the time we got to the playoffs, I just remember Greg Stiesma was getting minutes. Look up that name, Greg Stiesma. Man was getting minutes. Looked like a 2K generic. And but Rondo was feeding him pretty well sometimes. I do remember that. We were getting some quality out of him. But that was so special because the stars aligned. Again, the stars did kind of align. I don't want to say that like it's a positive thing that Derrick Rose got hurt, but I also did believe that was the only reason the Celtics were, really got as far as they did. I don't think they would have beat a healthy Bulls team that year. I didn't back then either. Well, when that playoffs happened, I was like, okay, so we're playing the Sixers, who again we went 7 games with, and I was like, okay, the next round. Oh wait, that was the second round. Wait, who did the Celtics play in 2012 in the first round? Hold up. Because the Bulls played the Sixers in the first round. Wow, I don't remember who Boston played in the first round of 2012. Damn, bro, that's the first one off the dome I've missed today. So we ended up getting the Sixers instead of the Bulls, and that's why I felt then like, okay, yeah, we can go to the conference finals if it's not Derrick Rose, and we did. And then they ended up, Chris Bosh was hurt as well, which again, stars just aligned, and so they ended up going 7 with them. And that's where that was especially crazy, because once Paul Pierce hit that 3 on LeBron, y'all know what I'm talking about. It looked like Miami was over. It looked like they looked like that team was about to crash and burn. And that was special because Boston, by that point, like, people had them written off in 2010, but in 2012, even I was like, man, if there wasn't some injuries here, I don't know what would happen. Like, I still remember thinking, like, I thought after that night, so much had happened, so many momentum shifts happened in that game that Paul Pierce hit that 3 on LeBron. So many momentum shifts happened in Boston. It was such a soul-crushing loss for the Heat. I was like, okay, cool. So I can go ahead and start game planning for the Thunder now. And I still remember thinking, like, yeah, we're kind of old and slow. Like, the Heat didn't have Chris Bosh. That was one thing. I was like, the Thunder, nobody's injured. You got Westbrook and KD. Yeah, I didn't think we were going to win that series either. I didn't have a whole lot of faith in 2012. So that made 2012 really special. But of course, they were defeated. Ray Allen leaves, and as a fan, I had hope in 2013 as a fan, but in reality, I think I knew that there was really no chance. Miami was a well-oiled machine by then. They'd won the championship. LeBron was all free and clear to do whatever he wanted, basically. And yeah, they had Ray Allen. And man, was I salty at Ray Allen for leaving. I was absolutely salty at Ray for leaving. I don't feel like talking about that whole saga, though, and what's come of it. I made a whole video about that Ray Allen saga. Yeah, so the last breath of that Big 3 team was, if you remember, the playoff series against the Knicks, which was the first round. And they went down 3-0. But they ended up winning 2 games. And in that third game, if you've never looked this up, look it up. The Celtics went on a massive run at their last game together. Their very last game together with KG and Pierce. Their last game, it was in Boston. It was game 6, and the Knicks were winning most of it, and then the Celtics went on a massive run. It honestly looked like in 2K, it looked like some cheating shit. It looked like somebody pressed choose sides and they went to the Knicks and just started throwing the game, basically. And it looked like the Celtics were gonna come back and win that game. I think they brought it to within like 3 points or something. And we were like, man, with momentum like that, if they win that game, they will go to game 7 and win. Just because, like, just like LeBron said with the Warriors in 2016, he was like, they all fucked up in their head. That was Boston at that point. That would have been them. But still, like, it was still a shot in the dark. And then they did, and then poof. After that, of course, the blow up happened. So yeah, from '08 to at least 2012, at a bare minimum 2012, Boston had their paws, not like they didn't have the East in a death grip or anything, but they were very high up. They were very high ranking in that situation. They were part of LeBron's story, and that is why you still hear about them. That is why you still hear about them, especially because LeBron is still around, still doing his things. Hell, you know, maybe could have ended up with the Lakers Celtics finals this year. Like if more stars align, just it wasn't completely out of the question. The last time they played, which was a little bit over a month ago, they were saying like very possibly, you know, it could have been an NBA Finals matchup, but you know, I doubt it. I don't think so. That's another 2012. I was really, as much as I love my Celtics team, I was on some 2012 energy this year where I was like, yeah, you know, I could see it, but you know, it'll take some things. I have to move some things around. But yeah, they're a part of LeBron's story. They're a part of the 2010 story. They did it. They influenced it a lot, and that's why you hear about them, man. That is why you hear about them, and they still have situations going on, and that's why you hear about them, and that's why you hate them, and that's why you can't stand them, is because they only won one championship, but because so much happened in that era, and so much happened resulting from that era, they never quite go away, for better or for worse. Diaries of a Celtics fan. Man, I rambled for a long time there. This is what the quarantine is doing to us, man. Yeah, of course, there were many more memories that I skipped over, but I could probably talk all day about all the Celtics games I watched and all the playoff games and all the moments. When Ray Allen missed one of my last one. I think the most memorable moment is interesting. You would think the most memorable moment would be us winning the championship, but because they won in '08, just like I said they were going to, and because it was expected, I don't think I appreciated that enough. Not only that, but I was in the 8th grade, so it's a little bit hazy. I'm not gonna lie to you. I remember standing in front of my TV and counting down when they won the championship, but I knew they were gonna win it, fam. I called it a year before that. I made a bet. I put my money where my mouth. I put my non-existent money where my mouth was to my dad at that point. I told them they were gonna win, so when they beat LA and they massacred them, I was like, yeah, cool, we won the championship. I knew that. I spent the next 4 years just like starving for a title, because then there was adversity. I didn't think there was any real adversity in the '08 season. The 7-game series weren't real adversity to me. I still expected to win those, but when after KG got hurt, because I was following him that year, when he got hurt and I was like, oh, Glenn Davis is our replacement, and we almost got beat by Chicago in the first round, and then we went 7 with Orlando. I remember thinking, because LeBron, by that point, LeBron was MVP. He won MVP in '09, and I remember thinking, like, I was just like, damn, we don't have KG this year. We have no intimidator down low besides Perkins, really. And I was like, LeBron looked really, really good back then. I was like, yeah, with Glenn Davis, I don't know if we could beat the Cavs this year. I remember because LeBron was just so full of energy back then. I was like, yeah, no KG. It was 2012 energy. It was 2012 energy. I was looking at that and I was just like, man, I don't know about this one. So yeah, so after that 2010, I was madly hungry, bro. I was so hungry for that one because everyone wrote them off. The 4 seed thing happened again. I remember packing up after game 5 when they took the 3-2 lead against LA. I remember turning the TV off and going upstairs and talking shit to my dad, because I was like, yep, I guess we're gonna win again. And I was so happy, and then to have that taken from us. Wanted to beat the Heat really badly in 2012. Yeah, there's a lot of heartbreak, bro. There's a lot of heartbreak. It's very traumatizing. So yeah, where was I going with that? You would think my memories would come from, yeah, you would think my most, the one that sticks out the most is winning the championship, but it's not. I didn't appreciate it, and I never got to celebrate another one. The moment that I always look back, I still have it downloaded on my PlayStation 3, was Kobe Bryant's game winner over us in January of 2010, so before the finals. And then you can go look that one up. I'm pretty sure you've seen it, especially since Kobe highlights have been everywhere now. When Ray Allen played nearly perfect defense on Kobe, we were up by 1 point, and he just hit the most Kobe shot possible. And then on the next play, Ray Allen missed that 3-pointer to win the game, which I thought was a good look. And I went to my PlayStation 3 back when you could write comments on your PlayStation 3 avatar thing, and I wrote "fuck Ray Allen" in all capital letters. Oh my goodness, yeah. I guess I kind of had that karma coming of Ray Allen leaving us the way he did, because I was part of the Boston Tea Party at that point, shitting on that man. Yeah, no, that is definitely the most prominent memory, is Kobe just snatching our hearts out that day. That's the one that comes to mind. because again, I have that video downloaded on my PS3 and I watched it a million times because I was just fascinated by that shot. I was like, bro, like Ray Allen was swiping at it. And I watched it a lot too in preparation for the finals that year. That's what it was. Yeah, because I was like, I really want LA this year. And man, we were right there, bro. We were right there. All right, I'm done now. I am done. I've talked enough about the Celtics. I have talked enough in general. Yeah, this is podcast probably like 57. Links to the Spotify and iTunes will be in the comment section and description if it is easier for you to digest there. Definitely appreciate y'all listening through these tough times. Hopefully we will have some NBA back soon, but yeah, I think this is the most NBA like podcast I've done since this thing started, or really in a while, because normally I add a bunch of extra stuff, but I had a lot of Celtics talk I had to get off my chest this time. So yeah, we'll see what happens next week. I appreciate y'all being here. Make sure to hit the like button, comment, and sub, and I will be back next Saturday.